Session, we'll take a look at solving linear equations. We'll first take a look at the 6 steps that are used to solve a linear equation. The first step is you want to remove any fractions. You'll remove any fractions by finding the LCD or the LCM. That's the least common denominator or the least common multiple. The next step is to remove any parentheses, and you'll remove any parentheses by the use of the distributive property. And the distributive property states that if you have some quantity A times another quantity B plus C, you will simply distribute or multiply that quantity on the outside by every quantity on the inside. Next, we will combine like terms on both sides. So just remember that a like term is the same variable raised to the same power. Then we'll use the addition or subtraction property of equality. The property of equalities tell us that whatever we do to one side, we must do to the other side in order to maintain equality. So the addition subtraction property of equality states that whatever you add or subtract to one side of your equation, you must add or subtract to the opposite side of your equation. Next, we have the multiplication division property of equality. So here again, whatever you multiply or divide by one side of your equation, you must multiply or divide the other side by that quantity as well. And the last thing we will do is check. All right, so let's take a look at all of the 6 steps in action. So here we're asked to solve 4 times the quantity x plus 4 is equal to 24. So here again, we'll use the 6 steps. The first step says to remove any fractions, which we do not have. The second step says to remove any parentheses, and we can see on the left-hand side that we have a set of parentheses. So we're going to distribute 4 or multiply 4 by everything within a set of parentheses. So 4 times x is 4x, 4 times 4 is 16, and I'm going to bring down the equal to 24. Next, we'll use the next step on the 6 steps, and it says to combine like terms on both sides of your equation. So as we look on the left-hand side, we don't have any like terms. There are no like terms on the right-hand side. So now before we get to the latter steps, before we get to the add or subtract property of equality, here I'm going to set a guide. And the guide I'm going to set here is V equals to C, where V stands for your variables, right? And a variable is any term that has a letter of the alphabet attached. And C stands for constants, right? A constant is just a plain number. It can be negative, it can be positive, it can be a fraction or a decimal, but there is no variable attached. Now, you can set your guide up as V equals to C, or you can set it up as C equals to V. There is no right or wrong. I'm simply setting my guide this way because I only have one variable term and it's on the left. I'm going to leave that variable term on the left, right? So I'm setting up this guide V is equal to C. So now I'm going to compare my equation with the guide. On the left-hand side, I only want variables. 4x is a variable, so it's okay on the left-hand side. However, 16 is not a variable, so I'm going to move 16 to the other side. The opposite of adding 16 is to subtract 16. So I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. On the left-hand side, the 16s will cancel. We're left with 4x. On the right-hand side, 24 minus 16 is 8. Now we have what we set out to accomplish. We have all of our variable terms on the left and all of our constant terms on the right. However, we want to solve for x, not for 4x. So the opposite of multiplying x by 4 would be to divide by 4. So in order to maintain equality, we're going to divide both sides by 4. So as we divide both sides by 4, on the left, the 4s are going to cancel. And we have a solution of x is equal to 2. All right, now we're going to check. Now, in order to check your solution, we always go back to our original equation. And in this case, we're going to substitute x for 2. And if x equal 2 is a solution, it will make both sides of our equation equal. So here I'm going to substitute x for 2. I'm going to use the OR operation, so I'm going to simplify what's in the innermost parentheses on the left-hand side. And we see that once we substitute our value of 2 in, it makes both sides equal. So we can verify, in fact, that 2 is a solution. All right, let's take a look at another example. Here we're asked to solve the following. X minus 1 divided by 5 plus x divided by 2 is equal to 4. So notice on this problem we have a fraction. So our first thing we're going to do here is we're going to remove the fraction. So we're going to find the least common multiple. Okay, we'll use the least common multiple in this case. Well, what are multiples? Right, so we have two numbers that are in the denominator. We have a 5 and a 2. So here are the multiples of 5. We simply take our value, which is 5, we'll multiply it by 1, multiply it by 2, by 3, by 4, okay, so on and so forth. Next, I'll write out the multiples of 2. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, right? That'll keep on going. So notice now we will have infinitely many multiples, but we will only have one least common multiple. So as we take a look at the least common multiple between 5 and 2, we see that the least common multiple is 10. So in order to remove the fraction, we're going to multiply both sides of our equation by 10. When I multiply 10 by the first term on my left-hand side, notice that the 10 and the 5 will actually reduce to a 2, right? So I'm going to distribute 2. So 2 times x is 2x, 2 times 1 is 2. Keep in mind that we are multiplying both sides by 10. So when I multiply my second term by 10, notice that the 10 and the 2 reduce to a 5, right? And now I'm going to distribute 5, and I have 5x, right? So we have the following: 2x minus 2 plus 5x is equal to 40. So now we've combined like terms on the left-hand side. Notice that we have two x terms. So 2x plus 5x is 7x. I'm going to bring down minus 2 and equal to 40. So now I'm going to set a guide. Right, the guide I'm going to set here are, I'm put my variables on the left, my constants on the right. So if I compare my equation with the guide, I only want variables on the left. So 7x is a variable, it's okay on the left. However, negative 2 is not a variable, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides, or I'm going to transpose 2, right, to both sides. Right, so I'm going to add 2 to the left-hand side. I'm going to add 2 to the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, the 2's will cancel. Right, we have what we set out to accomplish: the variables on the left, the constants on the right. However, we want to solve for x, not for 7x. So the opposite of multiplying by 7 is to divide by 7. Right, so we're going to divide by everything by 7. So we have a solution of x is equal to 6. All right, now we're going to check. So we're going to go back to our original equation. And we're going to substitute x for 6. All right, so wherever we see an x, we're going to put a 6. Right. So we have 1 plus 3 equal to 4. So in fact, both sides are equal to 4. Right, so we know that our solution of x equal to 6 is valid. All right, now we'll take a look at what's called a literal equation. And in this literal equation, there are too many unknowns to actually solve for a value. However, we can algebraically manipulate the terms so that in this case we can solve for a specified variable. That specified variable for our problem is h. So we're asked to solve 2 pi r plus 4h equals to s. We're asked to solve that equation for h. So we're going to use the 6 steps. So keep in mind the first step says to remove fractions, which we do not have. The second step says to remove parentheses, which we do not have. The third step tells us to combine like terms on both sides, and we have no like terms on both sides. The next thing I'm going to do is, normally we would set a guide, but in this case, since I have a literal equation, I'm going to locate the variable in which I'm trying to solve for, right, which is h. H is on the left-hand side of our equation. The equal sign breaks our equation up into two sides. We have a left-hand side and a right-hand side. So as it stands, the h variable is on the left-hand side. There are two terms on the left-hand side that contains the variable h, but one of those terms doesn't contain the variable h, right, which is the 2 pi r. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to subtract 2 pi r from both sides. Right, so once I subtract 2 pi r from both sides, the 4h is left on the left-hand side, and I'm going to bring that right-hand side down as s minus 2 pi r. Now lastly, we want to solve for h and not for 4h. So the opposite of multiplying h by 4 is to divide by 4. So we're going to divide both sides by 4. So on the left-hand side, the 4's will cancel, and we're left with h is equal to s minus 2 pi r divided by 4. Thanks for watching.